AI agents that do everything for you. It's the promise floating across every tech headline. AI agents that write your emails, code your website, manage your calendar, make your decisions, answer your phones, book appointments, basically run your life. While you do exactly what? Sip margaritas on the beach? Sounds amazing and enticing. A very seductive vision, but also dangerously misguided. Welcome back to Continuing the Conversation. I'm Shalene, and today we're challenging perhaps the most persuasive myth in AI. The ultimate goal is that AI completely removes human effort from the equation. But what if this do everything for you promise isn't just unrealistic, but fundamentally misunderstands how valuable it is to keep the human in the equation? What if using AI effectively requires more thoughtful human effort, not less? To help us unpack this counterintuitive paradox, I am thrilled to welcome back Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. Rob, always a pleasure to have your perspective that turns conventional wisdom on its head.
Thank you. It's great
Well,
to be
let's
here
get
as always.
started. This is a seductive promise, versus the uncomfortable reality that I think most people feel today. So AI agents that do everything for you is everywhere, from ads to product launches, venture capital pitches. Companies are racing to build AI that automates away the human. But what if that human piece is fundamentally the most important piece of AI? And what's the disconnect between this marketing and reality? It's a heavy question, a lot to unpack. So help us sort of navigate this overall thought process with AI automation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shalene. Always great intro. I appreciate those thoughtful questions that you bring to this. You have to imagine that an easy sell for a lot of companies, you don't have to think too much, is to just simply tell people that whatever you're giving them is going to solve their problems. They do it with Coke. They can do it with a hairbrush. We're really good at selling things to solve your somehow life's problems. And so it's interesting that people, again, it's just natural for people to apply it here in AI. And of course, it's absolutely unfounded. We are not yet at a point, and we won't be for a while. We got a few years still to go. There are only a very few use cases where you can drop in AI and immediately solve a problem for you. For example, just to make one of those concrete, image detection, it was always a thing where if you had a picture with a bunch of stuff in it and you're like, how many dogs are in this picture, kind of a thing. That has been worked on for decades now. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that it's a solved problem, but you can definitely take what you were doing before, drop in one of these solutions, one of these modern AI models, and you can get something really, really good really quickly. And so that's a very tactical use case of something where you were already doing this job. You were already trying to automate this job. And it's simply taking a tool like you had, like Tesseract or something that was already in there, and you're replacing it with this. So it's not replacing a job that was there, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is going to be pretty much where we're at for a while now. These models just aren't that capable to do these things, and they need direction. So that's the first thing, which is, those are the first two things, which is people love to sell this way because it's super simple. It's going to solve all your problems. It's not. We all know it, but somehow we keep believing it. Just because I drink that Coke Classic does not mean I'm going to have a better day. It just means that I have slightly longer to run on the treadmill tomorrow morning. The other thing, again, is there's very few use cases where it is just a drop-in replacement. Believe me, you'll hear it when it is true, so don't think too much about it. So the way to think about this stuff is it can augment right now you. And I find so few people using it in the augment capacity. Everyone's trying to use it as a do this for me, as we've talked about in the past. We've had our whole like ordering at a drive-through window. This isn't where this is. And again, I would encourage you to think about what the world is going to look like when that is true. And we should already be electing leaders and talking about regulation and things like that paint a future that we want. So just as my calling out to a lot of folks is spend the next time where you have your cup of coffee or you're drinking your Coke or you're using that hairbrush that was supposed to solve all your life's tangles and think about what that world would look like if it was in fact where you could just go to a thing and just say, go do this, and it would just go do that. Like what do you want from that world? So I'll just put that aside for a second and say we're not there and we won't be there for a little while, but now is definitely the time to think about it. But, again, when it comes to what should you be doing doing with these things and how should you be thinking about them is really helping you along. What can it do well to help you think about what you're doing today, and how can it partner along with you? I'll leave it there. Hopefully your next questions bring up the...
Yeah. I think that you're hitting on something I find really fascinating about this kind of paradox that we've talked about before and we're kind of highlighting now. Like you've suggested before, and we've talked about AI effectively, like what are the requirements of the human? Right? The human effort up front. Probably need more, not less, right? We as humans need to sort of change the way we behave and interact with the machine, with the agent, with AI. So why does leveraging AI agents' power actually demand more thoughtfulness from us humans and not less? And what happens when the human isn't being more thoughtful with the machine?
Yes, that's a great question that follows this. The way that I like to think about this, and I've said it a bunch of times throughout these episodes, is think of it like a new hire. You've gone through the process of vetting that hire. Supposedly they have the skills that you need, yet they don't hit the ground running on the first day. There are things that, unless you're in very specific industries, every person that you bring in the door requires them to understand a bit about what your organization is and does, and how do you process things, where do you store information, etc. So I always recommend, think of it like that. How do you don't just bark orders at the new hire that you have the first day. You're actually highly empathetic about them and the things that they can and can't do. And you're constantly checking in on them, and you're looking at their work, and you're trying to see whether or not it is meeting the way that your organization and the way that you need things done. And I like to dump that kind of into the mentor mindset, which is you want to think, again, drawing the exact opposite analogy, you don't want to be barking orders into that drive-through window. You want to be coaching that person. You want to mentor that person through that experience. And the exact same thing is true with your agents, which is, it's not just like, write this report for me. How do I think about this report? What information do you need from me in order to make this an effective report for my boss? When the report comes back, this is always one of my favorite examples. A lot of people, especially with ChatGPT, and I think this is just a product of the chat style interface, is that you don't really have a lot of ability to go back up there and in there and correct things. That you'll ask it, you'll bark orders at it, it will give you something, and you'll either take it or you'll think that it's dumb. And again, think about if you were working with a new individual that just came into your office. And of course, there are those people out there that do just bark orders at their staff, and they do just berate them if they don't do what they need to do. But let's leave those folks aside that definitely need their management and their retooling. And let's talk about the folks that actually spend the time and look at their reports and talk to them and try to figure out what's going on and set up those weekly guidance meetings and all those other things. And the same thing is exactly true with AI, which is it really, when an AI comes back with a response, say you're in ChatGPT, and it comes back with something really odd, your question, you can actually ask it and say, well, why did you think that? Or you can tell it the answer that you were looking for and say, well, why didn't you come to this answer? And that's one of the really interesting things that we don't necessarily get with the human side of things, is we can't always go to our reports and say, like, how am I as the manager doing? Are you getting from me what you need? That's not a common thing, though you should have it in your practice. And again, the same thing is true in spades with these tools, which is you should be able to go, part of your process should be to go in there, and when you get the response that isn't the way you think it is, you can talk to it about what that response should be. And what I always recommend for folks is, don't give it the answer and to continue. Right. You should change the input such that you work the input so that you get the response that you want. Because it's in there somewhere. You just need to give it the right context, the right set of questions. And that exercise of going through that makes you infinitely better. We've talked about this in a few episodes about this prompt engineering. And I don't think prompt engineering is a thing. I think it's a skill that's part of a regular skill set that we have, which is just simply critical thinking and understanding how, when a report gives you a response, and you're like, well, why did they provide that email to me? Or why did I get that artifact from them? So the question should be in your head, like, what information didn't they have, or what skills didn't you provide for them, and then provide them. And again, the exact same thing is true with these things. So again, I go back to the mentor mindset. I'll give you a hint and say it's mostly you. That's the problem. I know people hate to hear that they're the problem. But again, when you get a crappy response back from either your charms in Charm or your LLMs in other contexts, it's probably because you didn't provide it the information that it needed. You didn't provide the care and feeding that it needed to get what you needed to get.
Yeah, or the context, right? I know that happens so often. I see friends and family members and colleagues and folks that I meet with, and they're like, oh yeah, I use AI, I use ChatGPT, but like, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm like, well, give me a scenario. And 99.9% of the time, it's the machine didn't have the right context, or they didn't give it the context it needed to give the output that you're looking for. And it's like what I always say to my kids, right? Because I encourage my kids to use Charm and AI to enhance their abilities and their education, to help reinforce. And said, you can never just go to it and say, write me a paper on Africa, right? Like, okay, in what context, what grade are you, always give it your input and have it be amplified. And I think I love the mentorship. I love when you say that, because that's really how you have to think about interacting with the machine, or this is my staff. These are the people that work for me. And so I think those are all really good tips. Shifting gears a little bit, the corporate automation obsession. I talk to a lot of companies, a lot of executives, a lot of people at companies, and they're aggressively pursuing autonomous AI agents to automate away jobs and human involvement. But is this even like the right goal? Should businesses be focusing on AI that replaces humans, or AI that amplifies humans? And I love this question, so I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, you know the answer. So if you're a regular listener, you know where I'm going to go. But what's interesting, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm going to pick on managers now and just say, I just don't think that they have a few tools in their tool belt. And one of those tools is this whole notion of like automate. Like, we need to get rid of staff, like, because everything's getting more expensive and profits aren't getting any better. So the way to make profits is potentially either make people more effective or get rid of people. And the way you get rid of people is by automating away their job, right? And so those are kind of the tools. And I would just say lack of imagination is preventing people. I'll just say, I have never found it to be, in all of my years in work, that it was only through HR requirement that you were put on a performance improvement program. And usually those things are a load of poo, and it's just literally a way to document the way that you're going to get that person out the door. But no one ever really spends the time to provide the skills that they think that you're lacking. Right. And it's interesting, because I'm sure there's lots of studies around, blah, 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 and that you can think about. But again, it's interesting that you have a tool in your tool belt, which is you can either level up your existing staff or you can automate away your existing staff. And I would highly encourage leaders over the next couple of years is to not get rid of people, but instead figure out how to amplify those people, make them much more efficient, even if that means sitting down with them at their desk in a non-critical manner and just simply helping them go through their daily tasks and see where things might be made more efficient. I guarantee you that you will find massive efficiencies in doing that. And again, it's not an exercise of, oh, gotcha, I found out where that thing was that you were doing, or maybe you took too many coffee breaks. Because I would just say the reason people take too many coffee breaks is because their job is boring and it sucks. Yeah. So make their jobs more interesting.
Yes.
So anyway, getting back on topic, I believe that the right answer is always to amplify your staff. And the reason for that is what I said earlier, which is to bring in new staff takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy, and it's a whole different skill set. Taking the people that you have and leveling them up or amplifying them or just making them more productive, not in the work them harder kind of mode, but again, in terms of alleviating some of perhaps the cognitive load that may be part of their job. Maybe those are aspects of it that can be automated with AI, meaning it's not automated, it's just giving you ways to take a lot of information and distill it down to something much more palatable. Again, I would highly encourage those things. That the reason, and this is an idea that I constantly have in my head, and I think people forget that everyone has the same models. So there's a lot of models now. Just to digress for a brief moment, I remember less than a year ago, we were really only talking about 2 or 3, maybe 4 models. And now in Charm, for example, we have well over 30 models that are regularly in use. And like, that's crazy. But even with 30 models, everyone has the exact same model. So think about like your laptop. Everyone has the exact same laptops. The reason that your company is different than a lot of other companies, it's not because you're using the same laptop. It's how you use that laptop. So the same thing is true with your AI. If you use ChatGPT and you're just asking it, barking at orders, and it's giving you back stuff, like it's it's yelling back those same responses to everyone else. Like you're not doing anything interesting. So what makes that different? What context have you provided that? What care and feeding have you put into setting up the environment, your system prompts, and all of these things? Again, it all comes down to context and what type of questions are you asking. If you're getting the same response. There's no differentiation. So if you think you're going to automate away a big chunk of your business, everyone's going to do that. Like you're not going to gain any efficiencies there. So again, enhance and amplify your existing staff, because you are going to find the reason why your company does what it does and performs the way it does, and why your customers buy your products and not your competitors' products. And it's about the people. So support them.
Yeah. And I always say the best gift you can give your staff is something that's going to make their job easier, right? Whether it's giving them back time, making them more efficient. I say like the gift of charm is charm itself, right? It's going to take that person. In some cases, it's going to make that person 3 times itself, right? Yeah. Or it can take away some of the stuff that really is time consuming. Like I know for a lot of my years at Yahoo, one of my biggest time sucks was reviewing red lines and contracts. And of course, it's a very important task, but it's also a very time consuming one that now is not necessarily automated, but I have a staff and I have a charm that works with me to, instead of it taking up 80% of my time, it takes up 20. But
and what's always crazy about those tasks is when you have an even playing field of 50 tasks, of which only 2 of them are important, if you can somehow take the other 48 and reduce the amount of time you spend on them to really spend the time on the 2 important ones. But what normally happens to all of us is you just get blindness. You're just going through, for example, red lines, and you're reading them with equal importance, and you're not allowed to really, just because of the mental load of the task, you're not affording yourself the opportunity to spend the time where you need to spend it. So what's amazing about this is that you may spend the exact same amount of time doing those red lines, but you're now focusing them exactly on the areas in which you would get the most benefit for it. And what's amazing about that is the only one that would know that is you. Yeah. So there's no way that you're going to give it to your LLM and it's going to say, hey, sure, of course, if there's some obvious things that you should catch, then of course. But just to say, like, if given all things equal, given that things are specifically, because remember, contracts are all about risk, and risk is very specific to an organization, that once you understand that landscape, you're going to pick the ones that are specific to you. And if you can give your dude that context and say, look, here's our risk profile. These are the things that we care about. And it can go through and be like, look, here are the ones that I think you should spend the most time on first. At the end of the day, you were going to have to spend time on all of them somehow. So by it helping you and pick the ones that you should potentially spend more time on, and you'll learn with time, you'll do the usual thing, which is, again, think about the intern. You wouldn't accept its answers for the first time that it gave it to you. You would still read through all of them and go, oh, hey, I forgot to mention these 4 items that are actually important to us as well. And it gives you that gut check. What I would say, and this is what I always find super amazing, is that artifact that you get out of that, again, that document that defines your risk that would then help your dude, that is infinitely useful to an organization to then use those artifacts and talk across pillars, your departments in your company and say, hey, here's how we see risk. Before, it was just us looking at red lines in a document. And now I have a mental model of how I think about risk because I gave it to my dude, and now my dude helps me. And that document I can now take around, and like, you just created value in your organization. Yeah. And that's a really fascinating example, because in that there was no world in which that agent, that LLM, took away your job. You actually produced value and you produced better work through that. So hopefully that helps the
Yes.
audience kind of like pick up on how you can amplify.
Yeah, the amplification of partnering with the machine is a gift to all employees and to all companies, right? It's a gift to marketing, right? Because marketing people go crazy when they're like, "What are these salespeople's presentations? Like, this is completely out of our brand guidelines, right?" No longer do you have that problem, and no longer does that employee have to spend hours building a PowerPoint outside the brand guidelines when all you do is drop that contacts doc in. It checks the work and it lets the employee know if you're in line, right? Within seconds, within minutes. And then it's not like an ego or a power struggle between
Yeah.
sales and marketing or finance and legal, right?
What's funny is I've used that to turn it around. Sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations with employees or reports. And I actually had that with a website that I was working on one time. There were some challenges that I was having with it, and I didn't know how to tell the person who designed it, like what the challenges were. And so I basically, without a lot of context, I gave it to the LLM and I just said, "Hey, can you give me a critical review of this website?" And it came up with basically the top 3 bullets that I was worried about. And I just kind of left those comments there. And it was I didn't want to create a contentious situation. It was always challenging. And it was nice because it was kind of a, disembodied voice that kind of gave this feedback. And actually it was extremely well received and it was really helpful. So, again, think of all the different ways that you can use these tools to help you and in ways that you may not even have thought of. Just as a random example, this morning I was working on some slides and I forget that you can just ask your dude which one looks better.
Yeah.
So I had created 3 or 4 and I forgot that they could just respond with those images. So I'm like, "What do you think of these?" And they're like, "Well, my top pick is this one for these 4 reasons." I'm like, "Well, that's great. Like, thank you." I was in my own echo chamber and it was so nice to have another set of ideas, whether right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just usually that critical thinking that helps you see the world in a different light and then helps you move forward.
Yeah, I think that's such an important part of it. I mean, and there are such big differentiations about like how CharmIQ platform works versus like a ChatGPT versus like one of the other 30 platforms out there. And you sort of mentioned it in the beginning, it's kind of hard if you're deep in the conversation within a chat bot or a chat forum to go back and correct things and like kind of navigate that. So taking a sidestep, so how does CharmIQ's philosophy and approach differ, right? So the audience can get a better feel, because I'm sure a lot of our audience uses ChatGPT or Gemini or Llama or something on a regular basis. So how our agents do everything trend, and how specifically is CharmIQ different in terms of collaborative relationship between the human and AI, right? I mean, there's some good thought things in there and a little bit of education for our group here.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of points on this. One is I just read a tweet from someone that it actually stopped me in my tracks because I spend all my day in Charm. I don't use a chat-based interface. And the problem with chat-based interfaces is that conversations aren't linear. You bounce around a lot. You may go up and correct things and so forth. And when you're in a chat-based interface, you're kind of stuck. You're stuck with what was said. And to have to go correct the dude, it's really hard because you have to say, "Hey, when you said this thing up above, I need you to change it to this." Whereas what's amazing about Charm, which is why I built it, is you just go up and change the thing. Like your previous history is no less immutable than a document, because it is a document. And one of the amazing things that you can do on top of that is you can just give inline comments to your dude. So he may give you a bullet list of things, and I typically will strike through it if I don't like it. I'll put comments as to what I do and don't like. I'll highlight things for both me and it and so forth. And we can because the ubiquitous list. If there's one thing that, that has come out of this era of ChatGPT is the list. Yep. Everything's a list. And again, how many times have you gone through that list and you're rolling your eyes at like 3/4 of it, but there may be a nugget in there. And again, what's great in Charm is you just go through that list right up above where it wrote it. And you just go through it and cross out the parts that you suck. And you just say, "Hey, give me that list again. Like, that was crappy."
Yeah.
And again, trying to do that in a tool like a standard chat interface is just brutal. I mentioned earlier in this talk, a lot of the other things that we do, we kind of have refactoring if you're from a programming standpoint, but in the tool, which is as you're going through a document and you're building up all this context, you can just literally highlight sections and just say, "Turn this into reference material." And what that does is it takes it out of that main document that you're working on and it pulls it aside. So imagine you're in that case of doing the red lines and you realize like, oh, hey, I'm starting to realize like these 5 issues are something we see all the time. You can just highlight that, turn it into reference material, come back to it later. And again, turn that into your risk profile and things like that. Yeah. So this non-linearity is super important. The ability to introduce context is just super important. Everyone who's heard us for more than 5 minutes knows that like context is king.
Yes.
And having more than one persona that you're talking to on a regular basis is so important. I cannot imagine the poor folks out there that are stuck on ChatGPT. And there's been so many conversations where I have my charms that have specific viewpoints that look at things in very specific lenses that work and help me think about the world differently and think about the types of things that I'm working on. I have some writer charms that help me think about things from a lyrical sense, just things that help the rhythm and the movement of it work better. I have world building agents that help me just think through like, how does this concept like structure itself and so forth. And again, I can't imagine, I feel so bad for all those ChatGPT people out there because you're missing.
It's like having just one employee, right?
Yeah, one employee that has one set of answers. It's like, no, you can have an infinite set of these things.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful. And again, just think about that time that you were in ChatGPT and you got that one answer and you're like, that's dumb. And again, in Charm, you produce 3 or 4 different answers using 3 or 4 different models, using 3 or 4 different charms. You take that, you bring it together, you distill it down, and you have all these different viewpoints coming into play. And again, like it's amplifying the heck out of you. And again, if you've spent the upfront time to set up your context well, then they're all working in lockstep with you. And it's amazing.
It's amazing and it's easy. It's like training the charm or the agent for specific roles, for specific specialties, personalities, viewpoints, right? And it's having like a whole team of people instead of just one person. So I think that's the power of CharmIQ for me. So the future of human AI collaboration, right? We talk a lot about it. The human is still such an important part of the relationship. So looking ahead, what does the future look like? If we reject the AI agents that do everything for you myth and embrace more of a human AI collaboration, how might our relationship with technology and our own thinking evolve? And is it any different than what we're doing today with the real humans that work for us?
Yeah, I think, just putting a pretty bow on everything we said before, I grew up reading a lot of science fiction and, we were always reading stories about these mechanized suits that would go on top of us, that we would still be within the machine and like we're the one who's fighting and it's just the machine amplifying our movement. But we don't think about that with respect to thinking. Maybe, we hear these Neuralink things. We're like, we're going to eventually plug things in our brain. And there's a huge gap between those, which is you can be amplifying what you do. You can be creating this cadre of agents and charms that are helping you with everything that you do. A little bit of upfront time spent, again, trying to build up the context and the tools that you need, and a little bit of diligence in everything that you do. Again, that question about why did the answer come back strange? Like, why isn't it what I thought it would be? What context do I need to provide? Can I make that common and reuse that throughout? Mm-hmm. Going back to that science fiction analogy, you and your org, especially through this time of, as I keep saying, this adaptability quotient, this AQ that we need to add to everything that we're doing now, by going through this exercise and looking at what we do and thinking about how we do it and improving, because as we're improving with our agents, enhancing our abilities, that's all just stacking it up. And I just came up with one example earlier today that I wanted to kind of try out in this context. When you look at professional athletes, they spend so much time training. They're doing drills, they're doing practice runs, they're doing all these things. And when you think about you and your job, how often are you leveling up your skills? Like, you're just simply doing your job. Yeah. And I think that the only way we're going to make it through this massive boost of productivity that we're going to have, meaning if your competitors are doing it, like, you are going to get decimated, because all of their team are going to be superheroes and your team's still going to be doing the same stuff that you've been doing all along. So, again, think about that. We don't think about it with our mental things, right? Like, I went to school, I know what I'm doing. And it's like, no, like when you look at professional athletes, they went to school, they've been practicing their whole lives, but they are still doing drills
Yes.
6 days a week. And
Yep.
it's challenging them in different ways. So, I just came up with that because I know a lot of sports metaphors sometimes land with people. So I was just thinking that. So, again, look at around your staff, look at around the people you work with. Are you doing drills with your people? Like if they're just doing their job, that's like going and playing the game that you have to go play. But after the game, did you come back in and do a debrief and like talk about how we could do this better? And did you get the team together and start talking about it and come up with a playbook for the next run? Like this is what's on this generation of leadership in order to make it through what we're going to go through. You have the support now. You have all these, agents, LLMs, et cetera, to help you, but are you using them?
Right.
Get in there and supercharge everybody.
That's the most important thing. Are you using them? And we always say this, it's never too late to get started. Just get started. You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. So whether it's taking a look at this, going to Charm, signing up for a free account, and just exploring what we have to offer and what the agents are there and adding context to the conversation. But it's a repetitive thing that you need to do every day. And it does elevate your brain. It elevates your life professionally and personally. And think about the LLM as your sidekick, your mentor, your coach, right? It's a powerful tool to have. I always say to CEOs and people I'm talking to, it's a gift that you can give your staff to make them better, stronger, faster versions of themselves, right? Which then ultimately can give them time back and give you a better output. So, Rob, this has been genuinely mind-shifting as always. You've challenged us to see beyond the seductive, yet ultimately hollow promise of AI agents doing everything for you, and instead embrace the thoughtful, deliberate relationship that we all have the opportunity to have with AI. I know some of my favorite charms are charms I couldn't live without, and I give them specific names and personalities, and they have made me a better, stronger, faster version of myself. And I bring that not only to my professional life, but my personal life as a mom, as a friend, as an entrepreneur. So thank you. And for everyone watching, I hope this conversation has given you a new lens to think about your own interactions with AI, or perhaps just to get that journey and that relationship started. Take it from us. It's an exciting one. It will change the way you think and the way you live in all very positive ways. So the links to CharmIQ and our previous conversations are in the description. And as always, we would love to hear from you. How has AI changed your life? Has it made you a better, stronger version of yourself? Please engage with us, comment, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.